So, hey, everybody, I'm stepping in for John today. John is visiting his parents in Florida on a well-deserved trip. So that's awesome. I'm Dave Boniface. Um, and I'm really excited to be part of this and see where it goes. Today, we have the one and only Nick Nielsen as our guest. And Nick Nielsen is going to be talking about social media and growing your business through social media and some of those other types of things. Most of you on here, most of the people in the group, I'm sure, know Nick. Nick has a phenomenal social media presence and a very impressive resume around that. So, Nick, if you want to go ahead and kind of tell us how you got in the business and how you got to where you are today first.
Yeah, sure. Dave, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm glad you're stepping in for the Big Cat Stat today. This will be a lot of fun. But yeah, so when I was in college, I was an engineering major. I was a math geek. I loved calculus. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and just I always loved school, but I hated these labs that you had to go to as an engineering student. And around that time, my grandfather had asked me to look at some of his investment statements because he really didn't know really kind of what he owned or where it fit into his picture. And so I kind of geeked out on that and kind of thought like, hey, this might be a way that I could use some of my math skills in the world. And basically his advice to me was, go and learn how money works, because if you know how money works, you'll always have a job. You'll be able to take care of your family, but most importantly, you'll be able to help other people. And I thought that was pretty good advice, from an individual who had no more than an 8th grade education, who for the majority of his working career worked for Texaco as a welder and created intergenerational wealth doing so. But so that was kind of what got me into it. I switched my major into business at that point. My first job out of college, I was a teller at a bank, making a whopping $11.54 an hour, while a lot of my classmates got nice high-paying jobs and they were doing cool things. I was working at a bank in a not so nice part of town that got robbed relatively frequently. So that's kind of how I got started. I was in the bank for about 13 years in some capacity. Spent a great deal of that time as a licensed banker for some really, really good financial advisors. So I got to learn from them. And I finally got an opportunity to become a full-fledged financial advisor in 2012. Moved down to North Carolina, didn't know anybody, no clients, no book of business, started from ground zero. My business partner, Jeff Walters, and I, we went independent September 1 of 17. That's our Independence Day. So coming up on 5 years of independence. And, we're the guide to about 200 families right now and just really love what we do.
Nice. So in our industry, you're known for providing this really concise, practical advice that's designed to provoke thought and not sell product, which I really appreciate, because so much content out there comes across as very salesy or advertising. Tell me about the process and the preparation that goes into your work. And are your ideas inspired from client conversations? Are they organic? Where do you come up with the ideas for your content?
Yeah, so as far as idea generation, they're almost entirely questions that come up in client conversation, prospect conversations, or just from friends that, while working out or pickleball, like what are the things that people are asking me about? And then just trying to make those as simple as possible, just trying to provide context in a world of content.
Nice. And as you know, I've followed you for a long time. You're one of the first people I followed, and absolutely love your content, again, because of the conciseness. But over the weekend, I've kind of, most of you know, I've kind of gone dark on social media lately. But over the weekend, I started watching some of your YouTube videos, and I started watching some of that content, and tell us how you evolved from the LinkedIn platform over to adding some of the other content of YouTube and some of the other social media platforms.
Yeah, so I think YouTube is incredibly important because it's a searchable kind of catalog of your thoughts, and it's time stamped, which I think is kind of cool. The downside of LinkedIn is, if let's say I did a post about Roth conversions and someone's like, yeah, Nick did this post about Roth conversions, I thought it was really cool. LinkedIn is not searchable in any way. I mean, someone would just have to scroll and scroll and scroll to try to find that post. And when I post, 5 to 7 times a week, and it happened months ago, someone may never be able to find the post. And I think YouTube is just so powerful because it's so easy to search. If they type in my name and Roth conversion, they could probably find the same concept that I talked about in the post. So I think as we continue to build out content, create better content, I think YouTube will become more and more popular. And I think the way that people search for most things today, I think probably the first thing they do is probably search to find the answer on Google. And the second place they probably look is YouTube. So I think it's probably important to be relevant on both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How about when you go use these different social medias, how do you place those? For example, some of them help you with peer collaboration, some of them are more peer branding, some are marketing, client acquisition. What types of platforms work best for each? And have you kind of figured out the secret sauce to being able to drive client acquisition, not just branding and marketing?
So I think LinkedIn has worked best for me as far as making new relationships, finding prospective families that we might be able to help, or even referring people to other advisors that might be better suited for certain individuals. But the thing I like about LinkedIn is I can just answer kind of that client question that comes up anonymously. And someone might reach out to me in the DMs where say, the money is in the DMs. I don't know if you ever watched the show Arrested Development. There was that ongoing joke about, the money's in the banana stand. Well, in LinkedIn, the money is in the DMs. The money DMs are your banana stand. And I can't tell you how many times people have sent me a DM and said, hey, Nick, I really liked your comment about this. I've been thinking about that as well. Could we have a conversation? And a lot of times if somebody likes something that you say, they start to look a little bit more into what you're doing, right? They go and they read 3 or 4 of your posts. Maybe they go to your website. Maybe they go to your YouTube channel. And kind of what happens is they've already chosen you. They've already made that decision that they want to work with me. And now when we have that first conversation, it's more of me qualifying them if I want to work with them or if I'm a good fit for them. But LinkedIn has accounted for a substantial amount of our growth really since the pandemic began, even a little bit before the pandemic began. Between that and client referrals, I mean, that would be 100% of our growth. And it's probably 70-30 as far as 70% LinkedIn, 30% client referrals.
Nice. Nice. Cool.
So it's worked incredibly well with very little outreach on my part.
Nice. One of the things that I noticed in kind of revisiting some of your stuff that I did in preparation for our talk today is you've gotten really, really good at creating kind of a cross-platform methodology to what you're doing. So it's really, really simple to land on your YouTube channel after reading a post that you posted on LinkedIn and vice versa. So was that intentional? Did it just kind of evolve? And have you seen an increase in people following you or an increase in business because of that?
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to know how people find you, right? You don't know the full gamut. I think there's essentially 4 things that are important to me is trying to build our business. And those 4 things are kind of we want to continue to put a little bit of new stuff on the website. And we think the website looks nice, but we're not going to put as much effort into continuously updating the website. We think it's kind of that last stop where somebody's looking just as a credibility verifier. Is what I think about Nick true as it pertains to his website? So if I'm talking on LinkedIn about how my ideal client is a 35 to 45-year-old sales executive, and then they go to my website and they see a 75-year-old couple walking down the beach getting ready to get on their sailboat, well, there's a disconnect, there between the message. So there is some effort on the website, but it's very minimal. Second, LinkedIn, very powerful, because I kind of think of that as like the top of the funnel that gives me the most reach to the most amount of people. And then from there, I'm trying to use that as a way to get people onto YouTube. And then lastly, kind of the four horsemen approach would just be my monthly email that I send out to clients and prospects. The prospect email is just slightly different than the one to clients, because there is a call to action in the prospect one, which is not there in the client. But those are kind of like the four pillars of how we're trying to build the business. We know we're not perfect at any of those four pillars. It's kind of the constant process to improve, each one of those aspects a little bit. But I know, when you put a video on LinkedIn, you're going to kill your reach. It's just not going to go as far. But I do like sprinkling in the videos that take people to the YouTube page. Even if I get a third of the reach, because those people tend to be a little bit more serious about reaching out to me. Almost all of the people that end up reaching out to me have watched video.
Right. That's cool. That's really cool.
So it's kind of like, would I rather have 10,000 people who see a post, who none of them message me, or would I rather get 400 people to a YouTube video that I might get 2 or 3 DMs from? So I'd rather live in the banana stand and get people to the YouTube video that leads to a DM.
Right. No, that's cool. That's interesting. I would imagine that, people going on YouTube, but that's much more intentional. You're just not scrolling through YouTube like you are in LinkedIn and clicking things that catch your eye. You're actually intentionally going in and going to knowmyplan.com or going to, to your site. So that's interesting. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about that you've done a good job developing is this concept behind these one-page financial plans, as well as, these Carl Richards like drawings. So kind of where are your influences? Was Carl Richards an influence, or was it coincidental in some of the stuff that you do?
Yeah, so I would say the 3 biggest inspirations would be Carl Richards, Nick Murray, and then actually my mom was probably the largest influence. So my mom is a retired English teacher, and at the very beginning of this whole like social media thing, I was trying to write blogs for SEO, because I thought you were supposed to write blogs for SEO. And I was trying to make them, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 words, and I would send it over to my mom and she would read it and mark it up. And I made the mistake of saying, "Hey mom, what do you think?" And she's like, "Nick, this is really bad." She's like, "I don't know how anybody could actually get through this entire thing. Is there any way that you could make it shorter?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, I could make it shorter, but I'm trying to make it long. So, Google will like it. And if Google likes it, maybe people will actually find it." She's like, "Well, if people find it, they won't like you." There's more paraphrases what she said. So I went back and I made it shorter, and this process continued. And after 3 or 4 derivations of it, she's like, "Can you make it any shorter?" And I said, "Well, if I made it any shorter, it would just be a picture with 3 bullet points." And she's like, "Well, at this point, you have nothing to lose. I would try that." So really, that was kind of why I started drawing the pictures. We had been doing one-page financial plans going back to 2014 already. I'd read Carl Richards' books. I liked his stuff. I'm a complete Nick Murray geek. I think I've read every one of his books. Going through Nick Murray Around the Year, which is like the chicken soup for the financial advisor soul, where you get one entry over 365 days. So those are the influences. But as far as the one-page plan, when I was at the bank, I was tied to like the wealth management department, and they had this client who paid a retainer fee of $50,000 a year. They didn't manage any of his assets. And after a while, the guy that was like the head wealth planner, he's like, Nick, just go ahead and run the financial plan, do the updates, you do the presentation. I said, okay. And I think SunGuard was the financial planning software. Remember that, Dave? I don't think it exists. I don't think it exists anymore. I mean, not the most user-friendly thing on earth. But anyhow, I asked the client, I was like, hey, according to our notes, you've never actually implemented anything that we've suggested. And he said, yeah, he's like, honestly, this is so complex, I wouldn't even know where to start. And this is a really smart person whose net worth was, I know it was north of 25 million. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I said, well, would it be helpful for you if I just gave you some bullet points and broke it down onto one page? And he said, yeah, that would be great. How much more does that cost? And then I was like, well, I mean, no matter how high someone's net worth is, no matter how much you think they are astute financially, at the end of the day, when you give anyone a leather-bound book that's 150 pages and there might be 25 to-do items, they don't implement any of them. So we have the mindset that when clients see a lot, they do little. When clients see a little, they do a lot. And from really that point on was the idea that even if we have 25 things that we want the client to do, we're just going to give them 2, 3, or 4 things to do. And I would just say, hey, Dave, between now and the next time that we meet, these are the 3 action items that I want you to implement. And then what happened is people started implementing things, and they'd come back to us and say, all right, we got these 3 things done. What's next? All right, here's 3 more things. All right, we got those done. What's next? And then over the course of 18 months, they got the vast majority of the heavy lifting done. And at that point, we're just monitoring the plan, updating it. And what happened was over 18 months, we got, 10x, a 20x, 100x return on the amount of things that people were actually implementing within their own financial plan, that they were actually doing the things, the building block items to improve their life for themselves and their family, probably for generations to come. It's simply, we couldn't deliver that big plan in a way that was making meaningful impact on people's lives. And so I think the big plan in doing that, that's for the advisor. That's what most advisors don't understand. That's for the advisor to know what the client needs to do. It's the advisor's job to be able to disseminate that information in a way that clients can actually start taking steps towards accomplishing those things, putting those ideas into action. And so for us, the one-page plan has been a game changer. Like, we've gone through the same process for 8 years. We've tweaked what that one-page document looks like a handful of times as we kind of continue to dial it in, kind of continue to keep it fresh. But essentially, kind of where we've landed on, we have the page divided into thirds, and everybody does it differently, and everyone should be differently based upon the story that they tell clients and the story that they want clients to remember about their own financial picture. But the way that we break it down is the 1/3 of the page is just outlining the client's dreams. And recently I had this awesome conversation with this couple, and I asked them some phrase of the question of, hey, Dave, hey, Bonnie, what does financial independence look like for you? And this is a couple that the wife did all the driving. Like, she drove every decision. The husband was just in the background, hanging out, great guy, but said very little. And man, he shot out of his chair and he's like, I got this. He goes, financial independence means living in the mountains. I got the NHL package. I'm eating the best Indian food in town, and I'm playing my guitar. So literally on his page, dreams, 1/3 of the page is just outlining that statement. Boom, boom, boom. The middle third of the page is just a picture that we draw out. We call it our castle picture. And all it is basically a pictorial display of someone's balance sheets, their assets and liabilities. And then the right column, we just call it next steps. It is, the next 2 or 3 things that we need to do between now and the next time we meet. And people seem to really enjoy that. And I think it's always good to remind people of like, hey, this is what we're solving for, right? This is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the steps that we've outlined that are really important to get you from point A to point B in the most optimal way. And, has anything changed as it relates to how you vision financial independence? Are we still up in the mountains eating Thai food, or Indian food, playing the guitar and watching the NHL package? No, that's the vision. That's the vision. That's where we have to be. So it's always good to bring people back to that picture of what are their dreams? What are we solving for?
Nice. I love that. And I think in our industry, and our practice is kind of adopted. I love your idea, but adopted the idea that too many people in our industry, even good advisors, hit their clients with just a fire hose of information. Inertia kicks in and they do nothing because that's a natural thing to do when you've got too much to do that you don't even know where to start. So yeah, you just got to know what they want, but the only way you're going to get the outcomes that you really are looking for is to enable the clients to be able to do things in a palatable fashion. So I love that, Nick. I really do. So I remember like a year or two ago, you had this post that was literally copied by a big bank advisor. I mean, literally copied. He erased Nick down on the bottom, basically put their drawing in there. I don't know if that's happened to you much since, but it always, I think a bunch of us LPL guys kind of attacked him quite brutally for that. So have you seen, I know, and I also know Carl Richards gets real upset when people, use his information without a license, but has this happened to you since, or does it happen a lot, or what are you doing is there anything you can do to protect some of that?
It hasn't happened since, at least to my knowledge. There's been plenty of people who, do the tactful thing of, just resharing and adding a comment to it, which is completely cool. And that guy, could have done the same, but he literally went out of his way to pass it off as his own work. Yeah. And sometimes when you consume so much information, like the Carl Richards stuff, the Nick Murray stuff, like you have to be careful that you don't even subconsciously rip off Carl Richards.
Right.
Like you may not even realize that you're doing it. But Carl Richards actually has sent me like a really nice video message that he was really supportive of what I was doing and appreciated, my artistic abilities. And he probably feels good whenever he sees somebody who has less artistic talent than him. But he's been really good. And I think there's a lot of other financial advisors who have started kind of the doodles, as I would call them, which I think is cool. I think there's a lot of visual learners out there who like those things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, so I'm glad you brought that up. I'm a huge fan of Carl Richards as well and his approach to the business. And he, of course, is a huge fan of Nick Murray as well, too. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I wanted to ask you a little bit about collaboration. So in my opinion, some of the best social media work in our industry is being done when you collaborate with the likes of Keith Wilson, Joe Conroy, Anthony Ruffalo. Some of that stuff is just absolutely fun to watch. It's almost like an old 80s movie where they have just a whole bunch of different actors popping in from different movies. How did this happen, and how has it helped you kind of hone in your own personal abilities as far as some of the stuff you're doing on social media?
Yes. So first, Keith is like the godfather of advisor editing. Like that guy is just absolutely amazing in what he can do. And I was fortunate enough to be in one of the Truthful Mutual episodes, which I think could actually be an actual sitcom. But so I met both Keith and Anthony, through LinkedIn. Anthony's office is probably 15 minutes from my house. So I've gotten to develop a relationship with Anthony over the past couple of years, but it's just great to kind of mind melt with all the different, great minds of LinkedIn. Joe Conroy was in Charlotte within the past 6 months, I believe. Got to meet him in person and have dinner with him one night. So that was really cool to meet Joe Roycon as his truthful mutual name. But I think we can all learn from each other. I think there's things that you can take away from each of these people who are doing really great things on social media. And then you say, how could I implement that? Or, some of the times you have to realize, hey, as much as I would like to do some of the things that Keith does, like, I don't have the time to do that, or I don't have the desire to make something look as nice as he does. I mean, a lot of these videos, he legitimately spends 20 to 40 hours editing. I mean, I don't have the time and the resources to be able to do that, but it's an absolute like passion project for him. He loves that, and he does an amazing job at it. And it's just great to learn from some of those great practitioners. Like, Anthony is a completely different person in person than you see in some of these videos. If you met him in person, he's just he comes across sometimes as a little bit of kind of a hard guy, but super, super nice guy. His planning process is fantastic. I don't think people probably know how good of a financial planner he is because of some of the goofball stuff that he does on social media, but like very, very detail oriented, does a fantastic job for clients.
Cool. Working with LPL, I think a lot of people in this group are with LPL, so I think we can go there. They've been a great partner when it comes to compliance. But I'm sure you've had a lot of frustrations. And we even talked briefly before the official part started about one of the frustrations you had in having to reshoot some videos because compliance didn't like some of the words that you used. Any tricks or tips for some of us that haven't figured it out, that are just kind of wanting to do more, but kind of hit that point where we get really frustrated with just being shut down before we even started? So any thoughts or ideas or experiences around that?
Yeah, first of all, I would say, if you're going to do something that is a LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter post, like, don't even give it a second thought, just do it. Like, the odds of there being any issue with that is next to none. I've never had anything taken down by Social Patrol that there was any questions on. And as we were talking before we started shooting, in the process of doing a book, hopefully that'll be done sooner rather than later. For months, maybe years, I used the phrase, it was a Nick Murray phrase, about the benefits of owning the best companies in America and the world. And like LPL had signed off on that numerous times. Well, apparently at some point in the not so distant past, they had changed that policy, and they came back to me with that I can no longer use that phrase, but I could replace it with owning mainstream companies that have been through the ups and downs of the market. Well, at that point, I'd already shot 40 videos or 41 videos for the book, and about 14 to 20 of them had that magical Nick Murray phrase that needed to be edited. So, you could say that, hey, you should have sent a script to LPL to let them approve it. And that's probably the right thing to do. But I will also say I'm not that good of an actor, and I can't read a script. So I just have to look at a camera and just talk. And if I would have read a script, it would have taken probably hours to shoot the videos. And they probably would have looked incredibly robotic. So by no extent am I going to be taking any of Ruffalo or Keith's acting credentials away from them. I'm definitely not going to be the next Brad Pitt or George Clooney, because I cannot work off of a script. But I think overall, I would never be able to do the things that I've been able to do without being a part of LPL. So the juice has certainly been worth the squeeze. Um, the compliance max process, I think, has gotten better. I think the compliance analysts truly want to work with you compared to other places that I've been. They're trying to get things to the finish line for you. So I think overall, it's been a very, very positive process. I never would have dreamed that they would have kind of changed the language around that one phrase, kind of halfway through the video shoot. But it is what it is. And at the end of the day, if the worst thing that happens to me, I have to go back and shoot a couple of videos and the book gets delayed for a little bit. Not the worst thing in the world, but I couldn't come close to doing the things that I've done to grow my business if it wasn't for LPL's policy around social media usage.
Nice, cool, that's great. Switch gears a little bit. The ramp of growth I want to talk to you about. So I'm sure you had a bit of a J curve, right? When you started doing this, it probably you hit, like most people, you hit a point where this just isn't working, and you were working, and then all of a sudden started to grow legs. And it got stronger and stronger. And at some point in time, I imagine, and in other conversations we've had, you hit a point where the growth accelerated to a point that it kind of became unsustainable. You started getting, I'm sure, a lot of people reaching out to you that maybe weren't qualified, or maybe were qualified, but you just couldn't do it all at once. So my questions are about staffing up. I know that you currently kind of run an ensemble. Everybody is everybody's, every client is every advisor's client. As you continue to grow, and as I'm sure your success is with what you're doing is just going to be off the charts, have you put in any plans on how you're going to manage that growth? Are you going to try to stay in ensemble? Are you considering maybe adding some enterprise advisors or something like that as well to help you?
Yeah. So we, last year we started making some changes in kind of how we did things. And part of it was I had to let go of some things and I couldn't have my hands in everything. And so my business partner, Jeff, he's kind of taken over the roles of what I call, the CIO. So he handles, all of the investment management stuff now, which is a huge benefit for me that I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And then he has really kind of taken the ramp on all of like the red tail client activities, workflows, that kind of thing. So we were at the bank, we had Salesforce, and he loved Salesforce, and he knew like all of the different widgets within Salesforce and making all of those things work in an optimized way. It's been a little bit of a learning curve with Redtail, even 5 years in, to do all of the things that he wants it to do. But the main thing is I'm not going in there and working on tasks that he's working on. There's kind of that we don't really have the duplication of efforts anymore. We've and I can back him up if something were to happen to him, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, he's kind of handling the CIO role. He's kind of the chief administrator as well, where I'm focusing more on content, client interaction, and then financial planning. And then we hired Andy Hoffman as our chief experience officer, I believe in October of last year. And he has really helped with a lot of the behind the scenes social media content, submitting stuff to Compliance Max, and then doing some business development as well. But to your point, I was reaching that point where I just couldn't get it all done. And there was things that I wanted to do but couldn't. And so like Andy has taken a lot of our old blogs, he's kind of retooled them to where they do meet like SEO standards, where Google might find it. He's gone through the process of indexing our posts so Google can find it. A lot of the things that I never would have had time to get to, and we wouldn't have been able to put out as many YouTube videos if it wasn't for him, because I would have got bogged down on there is some editing that we do, but very, very little editing. But the whole editing, get those things submitted to Compliance Max, put in all the disclosures that they want for each video, upload the final copy. So that's kind of where we're at today. Obviously based upon the trajectory of where things are at. No doubt there will be additional advisors that we'll have to bring on in the not so distant future, or my wife will kill me.
Yes, exactly. I was going to ask you that. That was the next question I had for you actually was, so when I watch your YouTube videos, especially the latest ones you've done with Andy, there is this certain amount of collaboration and camaraderie that comes across. The way you share information and the way you banter back and forth makes it really easy to watch. And it's just not you droning on about some subject. There's actually conversation back and forth. First of all, that was, I thought that was really interesting. Secondly, was that intentional or something you kind of developed together? It almost has a Kitsies and Carl type atmosphere when you guys are talking, the way you banter back and forth. So how did that develop? And I guess that's what
Yeah, I think it's just a lot easier to have a conversation just like we're having today versus me just turning on the camera and talking about a topic. I like the back and forth, just like we'd be having lunch together and talk about a topic. I think that's a fun thing that people like to watch. The challenge with doing the videos with Andy is he is not a licensed advisor. So we have to be super, super careful with what he chimes in with. Like he's a great student of the industry, and he knows an incredible amount about, in investing in insurance and real estate, and very well read on crypto and NFTs and vintage art and wine and classic cars. So he has a plethora of knowledge. Unfortunately, he can get somewhat handicapped because of what he can and can't say as an advisor. So he kind of takes on the role of like quasi host and tries to, set me up. But he's a real student of YouTube, which I appreciate. And he'll send me videos and like, hey, check out this video. I think we should do something like this, or I think we could really incorporate this into what we're trying to do. So right now we're trying to drop at least 2 videos a week. And, we've been told by people who've built channels that it's a really slow process. But I think at the beginning of the year, we had 9 subscribers. We're up to 67. So, it's a slow path forward. We're doing it all organic, nothing paid. So people are like, yeah, you can get to 1,000 subscribers really quick if you're willing to pay for it. I was like, nah, I don't care about how many subscribers I have. I'd rather, find a couple hundred people or 1,000 people ultimately that are interested in what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Cool. I want to know a little bit. I know we talked about this before we started the book, right? And it seems to me that you're in a position with all of the content that you put together that a book is kind of the next step. I want to know a little more about that process, where you are in the process, and are you going more of someone writing the book for you from your content? Are you trying to write it yourself, or where are you going with that?
It's a great question. So I would say writing a book might be a little bit of a misnomer. It's more illustrated a book, because I do have like a 1-page intro about the book and why I wanted to write it and who were some of my inspirations and the people that I'm really thankful for that allowed me to be in this industry. But after that 1-page intro, it's literally 40 pages, 1 picture per page. That is some sort of financial planning related topic. Then there's a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of every page. And in that QR code will take you to a private YouTube video that is anywhere from 60 seconds to 2 minutes about kind of how I see the real life financial planning implications from that doodle or sketch. So after the first page, not a lot of words, just 40 pages, some sketches, and then you got to sit through, if you want to, 40 videos of me. So I don't know how it'll be. I don't know how it'll be used. I don't know if anybody will buy it other than my mother. But at the end of the day, I can say that I have a book, which seems like a rite of passage for any independent financial advisor.
So can you, at that point in time then, and again, excuse my ignorance around technology. So I would imagine if you've got some sort of QR code, that would enable you to keep the information fresh too, right? Can you just reshoot a video if something changes? Is it that easy, or is that not something that can be done?
Dave, that is a great question. The QR code is tied directly to the YouTube page or that YouTube video, and I don't know if I could edit that particular. I'm sure there's a way to maybe redirect that YouTube link to a new link on it. One of the things that I tried really hard in the sketches of the book was to do more evergreen content. So I kept things out about Roth conversion and tax rates and things like that that would be more, fluid from year to year. But it was kind of cool to go in there and create the QR codes. We actually have our logo in the middle of the QR code, which was kind of cool, I thought. So that was fun to kind of link it all together. So it was a fun process because it's something that I haven't used before. And then we've done some, because we already had the QR codes at this point, we've used some of the QR codes in our marketing. And I will say, like, people are more apt to scan a QR code than I initially had thought.
That's cool. That's a great idea. That's awesome.
I think that's probably because people go out to restaurants now and they kind of get accustomed to, scanning the QR code to see the menu or whatever. So I think there's probably additional financial planning implications of utilizing those QR codes in the years to come. Who knows? There might be something better that's, make those obsolete in 3 months or 6 months. But right now, I think they're kind of cool.
It's really cool. That's great. Finally, before we kind of open up to questions, just real simply, what's the best advice you can give for somebody who wants to increase their social media exposure? How do you start? Talk a little bit maybe about the patience required, because I think that's really important. If you do it for 3 months and expect the world to go viral on you, it's just not going to happen. So a little bit about advice for those that are going to be watching this video or that are here, for just to kind of how to get more serious about your social media approach.
Yeah, I think you would want to take a similar approach to social media that you would try to do if you were starting a fitness routine or a new diet. Like, you just have to stick with it for a period of time. If you're just find the area that you think is either the easiest for you to start with, or something that you really enjoy. And if it happens to be both, that's great. But I think some people get burnt out on doing video because video is so time consuming, especially when you start doing edits. Unless you're willing to just shoot like raw video, upload it, and let the world see it. If you're doing any more than that, it's really easy to get burned out. I would say the simplest starting points are doing things like I've done, like the doodle. It could just be, the text posts. It could be using a free service like Canva to create some sort of infographic to go with a financial planning topic that you're talking about. But you got to start, and you got to realize when you start anything, you're not going to be great at it, but it's about doing it for 3 months and then looking back to where you started and be like, you know what? When I first started, it wasn't great, but I'm a lot better now than where I was. And recommit to that for another 3 months and just keep going. And I would encourage you to get away from metrics as a way of thinking, oh, look how great I'm doing, or conversely, man, look how bad I'm doing. You might only have 8, 15, 20 people that view something that you did. But if those 8 to 20 people actually, if it's meaningful for them and they remember your name, then that's incredibly important, because nobody is getting on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter thinking, man, I really hope I find a financial planner today. Man, if a financial planner could only send me a DM, like, my day will be complete. No, the realistic thing is that maybe 1% or a half of 1% of your network is thinking about, man, I need to meet with a financial planner at any given time. And you just want to be one of those 2 or 3 names that they think of whenever they have this life event happens, whether they don't know what to do with their stock options, or they just received an inheritance, or whatever the case might be. You just want to be one of those 2 or 3 people. And the best way to do that is just to be consistent, to post 5 to 7 times a week, answer client questions, and just give it all away. Don't try to create gated material, just give it all away. And the people will find, your tribe will find you. And I think that's probably the most misunderstood thing about social media. It's not just that clients find you, it's that your exact right clients find you, because it's the people that fall in love with you and your personality and the things that you're saying. You're giving yourself a chance for your tribe to find you. To me, that's a heck of a lot better than cold calling and direct mail. And I think it's even better than client referrals, because these are people that have seen your content, they've seen your videos, and they're saying like, yeah, Dave's my guy. I don't want to go another day without Dave being my planner. I think that's the real power of social media.
Oh, cool. I would imagine there are times when people come see you for the first time and you're already their good friend because you've been in their living room on a YouTube channel for 4 or 5 hours, and they know you. You've never met them before. That's gotta be
Yeah. It is funny. I've heard several times, like, I feel like I already know you. Like, I had one guy last week, he's like, I hate to tell you this, but I feel like you're already upset with me. And I was like, oh, why is that? He's like, I have a $600 a month car payment.
That's awesome.
I was like, well, you're not going to have a $600 a month car payment in about 30 minutes.
There you go.
And we did a screen share together, and made him go in and pay his car off.
Nice. Nice.
He's like, he said, I can't do it alone. I was like, that's no problem. I'll let you share your screen. So I went into his bank account and paid his car off.